Hello, welcome back to the James Ramon Reviews for yet another review episode. And in today's episode, I'm going to be talking about the Yakuza game series, and we've not done our reviews in a while. Mostly I talk about books, shows and movies on this sort of series I do, where I ramble at the camera and give you my talk about things and get to the point and things like that. But we're going to talk about the Yakuza series, and this is going to be, I mentioned it in a community tab post, but this is going to be one of the longest, maybe the longest ramble and review episodes because, okay, like the first few games is like scratching the surface of what really is this stuff, because you've got Yakuza 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, Yakuza 0, Yakuza Kiwami 2, Yakuza 3 remastered, Yakuza 4 remastered, Yakuza 5 remastered, then Yakuza 6 and Yakuza 7, and you got the spin-offs. I could go on for 90 minutes just describing to you. There's so many spin-offs, there's so many original versions, remasters and remakes that would take so dang much out of your time that, yeah, I would just be going on for 2 hours or something. So there you go, right? But I'll start off with how I got into Yakuza, then I'll dive into the plots and stuff like that. Not every single detail, like the plot, what the games are about, what I like about it so much, and all that kind of stuff. So Yakuza, the way I got into Yakuza was through the thing called the Game Pass, and if you play Xbox enough, you'll know about that. And it's I seen Yakuza 0 and Yakuza Kiwami on there, so I was like, okay, I'm going to click on Yakuza 0, and I didn't know if Yakuza 0 was the entry point where, the entry point of when you get into the games, this is the game you want to start off with. So I play it, and then I realise, right, it's and then after a while, realise that this was the prequel to Yakuza Kiwami. So I've played it, I know all that stuff, and then I play Kiwami 1 and then Kiwami 2, and then obviously Yakuza 3 remastered, Yakuza 4 remastered, Yakuza 5 remastered, Yakuza 6 The Song of Life, and Yakuza 7 Like a Dragon, right? That might have been Mandarin I was speaking there because there's so much. So, yeah, as you know, right, so there's Yakuza 0, but it follows this story about Kiryu and his brother Nikishi, is that I'm saying right? So you have those two guys, right? They're brothers the whole way, not the whole way through, but they build this brotherhood thing, and then Kiryu is this guy. There's this whole case about how it's the empty lot. Actually, I'll just Google the plot for you so I can understand. There's a lot to go into, and there's a lot to explain, so double checking things is definitely what we need to do here. Yakuza's video plot summary. Okay, set in late 9. So this is the plot summary of Yakuza 0. Set in late 1988, during Japan's bubble era, and 17 years before the events of the first game, the story follows Kazuma Kiryu and Goro Majima as they get embroiled in a conflict between various Yakuza factions for control of a patch of land known as the Empty Lot. So at the start of the game, you see Kiryu beat the heck out of this guy called the Empty Lot, and every guy that's after you is trying to sort of get to the empty lot, if that makes sense. And what I like about Yakuza 0 is the simplicity of it. So you do this certain thing, you go do that thing, and you move on. But you get introduced to the Dojima family, the Tojo clan, and there's also the Omi Alliance, who are these factions in Yakuza. So you get those in there. And you met the people in the Dojima family is Kuze, Shibusawa, Awano, Dojima himself, of course, and you've got the patriarchs of the clans and stuff like that. So you have all that stuff, and there is also boss fights in Yakuza, and it's most of the time Yakuza is a beat 'em up, so you'll be punching people, and you get different fighting styles. You get Brawler, Rush, I think one's Legend, and then the Dragon of Dojima, and there's different colours. Rush is purple, Brawler is blue, Legend is yellow, so you get these different styles, and then Majima, right? So for there's chapters as well on this game. So for two chapters or something like that, you get Kiryu, then you get Majima, and it kind of goes between both characters, and it is a very very good style of doing things. It's like, okay, we get a bit of Kiryu, a bit of Majima, and it does recap events and things of that nature once you go back to the next character. And I will say that especially like some of the boss fights, there's some boss fights that are good, and I have been replaying Yakuza Zero just to sort of help myself with the review, and I can't get an Xbox Series X to play Judgment, the spin-off to Yakuza. So I've been playing through it, and it's like there's this one boss called Kuzi, like I mentioned, but it is like the first two boss fights are okay, right? Or the first, actually not okay. The first boss fight is when you go into the Dojima family, right? The Dojima family office or whatever. You beat Kuzi, then the next one's he's in the sewer because Kiryu has to run away from the Dojima family because they're all on his case and trying to get to him, kind of thing, after the events that transpire in the game. So you get that, but then the third boss fight, it just kind of feels like Kuze is getting a bit overused here. So he's just continuously being used. Kind of gets boring and repetitive when you just keep fighting Kuze. He's like, his whole motivation is, Kiryu, you betrayed the Dojima family. I must fight you more than once. Right. So Kuze, I just thought we could have fought Awano or Shibusawa, but yeah. So Yakuza Zero it's not a perfect game. It has good fighting styles. There's good story elements to it, but there's definitely that. So yeah, and the final boss, right? If you play Yakuza Zero to the very end, you fight this guy called Shibusawa, and it is one of the best endings to a Yakuza game, or maybe the best end to a Yakuza game. And I just love the simplicity of Yakuza Zero. So I've said enough about Yakuza Zero. So Yakuza Kiwami is the remake of Yakuza 1, and it's that continuation of the Kiryu storyline. So if you don't play Yakuza 0 before this, you don't get that extra context of what happened in the prequel. So I do recommend you do Yakuza 0. So I can't get my hands on like Yakuza 1, Yakuza 2 and the ones that went remakes. And Yakuza Kiwami, I don't remember so much about it, but I know that there's a big giant plot line where Kiryu is in jail for 10 years and he doesn't really know why he's in jail for 10 years. And there is this thing in Yakuza Kiwami called the Majima Everywhere system, where it's all about fighting Majima more than once. And obviously you know about Majima based off Yakuza 0, but there are fans of the Yakuza games who have their complaints about this because you'd fight Majima more than once and it's just super duper repetitive, and that's kind of my problem with the Kuze things. Like, you fight this guy more than once and he's just popping up every single time, like 4 or 5 times. And I don't think you can disable the Majima Everywhere system in Yakuza Kiwami. But story-wise, I don't remember everything, but I do know that in Yakuza Kiwami, it kind of, like, you know how in Yakuza 0, you have, like, Nikishi cuts ties with Kiryu when you play the game more. In this game, it kind of extends that rivalry, and it just builds the tension more, and in Yakuza Kiwami, I know some parts of it, and there's also the introduction of Haruka, who's this little girl. I know about that. There's also Date-san, who's this detective. But the ultimate climax leads to, I think it's the brother clash between Kiryu and Nikishi, obviously. So there's that, and there is also a bit of karaoke, and speaking, like, the music in these games are very good as well, I'd say. Like, they're very nice to hear. So that's enough of Yakuza 0 and Yakuza Kiwami, right? So now we move on to Yakuza Kiwami 2, which I am going to Google the plot of because this is one of my favourite Yakuza games, but I've kind of forgotten the plot. I know there's like this boss called Ryuji, but let's see. It's the remake of Yakuza 2 for those wondering. A year after leaving so this is the plot. A year after leaving his former life in the Chojo clan behind, ex-Yakuza Kazuma Kiryu is called back into action when the clan's fifth member, Yukio Terada, is murdered by assassins from a rival organisation, the Omi Alliance. So that's the plot of Yakuza 2, or Yakuza Kiwami 2, And I do think I did really enjoy the combat in Yakuza Kiwami 2. It was a really fast pace and things. And the Ryuji thing, right? There was the Kuze thing where I didn't like how you fought him more than once and it didn't really make any sense. Or not make any sense. It just was kind of regurgitated and repetitive and it's constant, constant, constant. But with Ryuji, you fight this guy like 3 times in the game, but I just think every single time you fight him, it just gets better and better and better. It's just so much fun to fight Ryuji. Ryuji Goda is his name, and he's one of my favourites. And I would go on about the plot, but I finished some of these games like a year or two ago, so I can't remember every single aspect. So with that out of the way, let's move on to the remastered collection, or Yakuza 3, 4, and 5. So let's start off with Yakuza 3 because I think I slightly mentioned this on the podcast a long time ago on the James Ramblin' show, but Yakuza 3 was a game for me that I wasn't the biggest fan of, and the reason for that was I was interested by this idea that Kiryu, after these games, goes on to become this leader of the so I think it's the Sunflip. Let me just check what this. I'll just check the plot again, right? So Yakuza 3 plot summary. Okay, I have to do this a lot. Okay, what is the plot of Yakuza 3? In 2009, Daigo. Oh, okay. No, I'll do the remastered plot summary. Actually, hold on. Remastered plot. Hold on a second. Yakuza. So Kazuma Kiryu has earned his retirement on the sandy beaches of Okinawa. But when a deadly power struggle arrives on his doorstep, he'll have to walk the streets of Kamurocho to escape his past for good. Right. So that's kind of what it was. It's like Kiryu kind of just forgets about the Yakuza lifestyle and he looks after these kids. And I originally thought this idea was going to be interesting and everything like that. But it drags on for a long time and he's just looking after these kids. And the combat as well is a bit janky and a bit... it's not as smooth. But let's just say that they remastered it and they didn't remake it. So they couldn't make the combat exactly even better. It was just based off the sort of thing they used for the remaster. So I can't... So I will replay Yakuza 3 at some stage, but at the time I wasn't the biggest fan of that. In the boss fights, I wasn't really too into the kind of bosses there was. Like I can't remember any of the bosses. Like if you asked me who is the final boss of Yakuza 3 right now, I couldn't remember. But for all these years, I've remembered Shibusawa, Ryuji, and all of those bosses because those are memorable moments and they were so much fun. So then we get to Yakuza 4, and just to slightly mention this, right? In Yakuza, you're in Kamurocho, which is a city, and then there's Suntory and there's Okinawa, like in Yakuza 3 and stuff like that. So there's cities you go to and things like that. So I just want to mention that. So then we get to Yakuza 4, which is the first game where you play as more than just Kiryu now. So as it was established in the previous Yakuza games, you were playing as Kiryu. But in Yakuza 4, you get the following. I know Saejima, Akiyama, Kiryu is one of the other protagonists, but I don't remember the other one, right? Yakuza 4 playable characters, right? Okay, let's just do that. So, no, who are the playable? Come on. Alright. Okay. Who are the playable characters in Yakuza 4? Okay, here we go. Okay, so it said here there are 4. These include the newly introduced Shun Akiyama, Taiga Saejima, and Masayoshi Tanimura. Tanimura is like this cop detective guy, and they do have these origin stories. Like Akiyama is this guy who is like a loan shark, and he runs this place called the Sky Finance. Then I can't remember too much about Tanimura, and Sajima's backstory actually ties back to Yakuza Zero's whole thing about how they introduced Majima. I forgot to mention that, but Majima, they kind of introduced Majima's origin story and how he's connected to his oath brother Sajima, and like you learn about how Sajima did this 18, killed these 18 members of Yakuza, and he had to go to jail and stuff like that. So you had all of that stuff. But Yakuza 4 is fun, I will say that. It still kind of repeats the same combat system. I thought the combat wasn't as bad compared to Yakuza 3. And the story, I don't remember too much about the story. I know there's some stuff in there. But when it comes to like the Yakuza games though, like Yakuza 4 and 5 are the ones where the fans aren't really too big on the story because of the way it is and all of that stuff. But it was good that they tried something different with having more than one protagonist and not just being like, ah yes, play as Kiryu, 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 please. So yeah, there is the final bosses. There is a cool thing to do with the final bosses. Like each character you play as gets a separate boss. So I don't really know much. Other than that, I can't really go from there. I can't go into super duper large detail about Yakuza 4. So Yakuza 5 is another case where you have more than one playable character. So we kind of just continue that thing that Yakuza 4 already did. But this time it's kind of like Kiryu, he's like this taxi driver. Then I believe like Saejima, is you play Saejima again. Then you have Haruka, and Haruka was established in Yakuza Kiwami. But she has more of a I'd say she has more of a center stage here because she's more of um, an idol singer, and she gets to sing, and that's quite fun about it. And then you get Shinada. Akiyama is in there, but Akiyama doesn't have as much of a presence compared to Yakuza 4. So you have that, and then the Shinada, who's this guy who is a baseball player, and you learn all of that stuff. But like the story of Yakuza 5 is like, okay, you play as these 5 characters, or Kiryu and 4 other protagonists, but it's like the game is so long and it overstays its welcome that but it's like so unperfect that it's still very enjoyable. Like the ultimate climax, like I read the plot summary on my Xbox. There's like, oh, this big clash between the clans of the Omi Alliance and the Tojo clan, but then it's like it's so obvious that like it isn't very remarkable in terms of story, but it is like a very fun experience still. It's just like the Saejima part of the game, like you spend like 3 chapters doing this hunting in the woods, and it's like, oh, just get to the point, get to the point, get to the point, get to the point. And it is and if you go from Yakuza 0 to Yakuza 5, you'll notice that Yakuza 0 is about getting to the point and getting to the point. This game though, it's like, no bro, I am not getting to the point. I'm gonna just mess around and just be all met, like just go like be over, like so just overstay its welcome and just do way too much for its own good. So it's kind of like Yakuza 5 was the game that it was quantity over quality. It was more about giving you more things to do than like just getting to the point and have stuff like that. So I've established my thoughts on Yakuza 0 to 5. So then we get to Yakuza 6, and the thing is with Yakuza 6 is like, this is the turning point for the Yakuza franchise in the sense that, likewise with Yakuza 3, I wasn't the biggest fan of this. I didn't really relate to the story, and I thought it was going somewhere originally. But Yakuza 6 is very bare in its story. Like, there's only 13 chapters, and it just takes a while to get going, I suppose. I don't know, man. It's like hard to explain it really, but it's supposed to be Kiryu's final outing as in the series. But we'll get to that stuff much later when we talk about Yakuza Like a Dragon. But it's just like it's supposed to be Kiryu's final story thing. But then it's like they kind of emphasize that he's getting old now, and he's this old man, and he's getting old, and that's bad. And then you have like these weird plot things about it, like there's this guy called Somiya, right? And he has this idea about how the Yakuza shouldn't have tattoos. And I feel like, okay, maybe upon a replay I could understand that more, but when I was playing it in the moment, I didn't understand it right. Because the normal like perspective of the Yakuza is that tattoos are everything. So when we get this idea about how Somiya, this character, believes that the Yakuza should not have tattoos, it's like it doesn't make sense, but maybe upon a replay I could understand it a bit more. And there was kind of like these forced elements that made no sense, like these random things that happened out of nowhere. And like Kiri, and like you have this whole storyline about Haruka's in a coma, Kiryu's final out and stuff like that, and then we find out that Haruka had this baby called Haruto, and it kind of like follows the events of Yakuza 5 and stuff like that. It follows the events of that. We learn all of this stuff, but we don't learn about who the father of this baby is, until like very later on in the game, and it was kind of a bit annoying when we didn't know who this baby was, and it was very strange. Like it was all about family. It was a bit more about family, and not the stereotypical way of Yakuza, because there is like this weird boss fight where you fight this guy in this BDSM get up, and there was they took a lot of risks. They took a lot of risks with Yakuza 7, and so like yeah, there's other few things I could talk about. So yeah, like that's it, man. Like Yakuza 6, but I will say with every kind of issue I had with Yakuza 6, I kind of laughed at some of the moments. And I do like the soundtrack, like the OST, the original soundtrack of Yakuza 6 is amazing. I like it. And let's just bear in mind that Yakuza 6 was also made at the same time as Yakuza Kiwami 2. So the people who developed the Yakuza games had to kind of rush one of the games, and it turned out that Yakuza 6 was the one they had to rush. So you could understand that they made all these risks, and the final boss isn't satisfying. Like you fight this guy who's just barely in. He's like introduced slightly. He's introduced slightly, and then like you just fight him instantly, and it's like they kind of rush the endings there. So there you go, right. So now we dive into Yakuza 7 Like a Dragon, and I finished this like a week ago almost, and this is by far one of my favourite Yakuza games because, okay, people will be people when not everyone can accept change. In the Yakuza 7, we get a whole new gameplay style and a whole new protagonist. So he plays this guy called Kazuga Ichiban, and the whole new game style is turn-based role playing, right? Turn-based role playing game, right? So you get like magical abilities and stuff like that, and you have to level up. But it is actually very good. I like Yakuza 7 a lot, and it kind of surprised me how good it was, because coming off of Yakuza 6, it's like, is the quality dip that bad? But like when I finished Yakuza 3, I still found enjoyment in the games after that. So this was kind of that kind of thing. Like I still found ways to enjoy Yakuza 7, and the story, like I'd like there is good most majority of the time. Like the story isn't bad, and I'm glad that they do have like Ichiban has these party members like Namba, Adachi, Saiko, Xiao, Jun Jihan, who was introduced in Yakuza 6, and stuff like that. So you have all of this stuff, but like they don't make so many chapters for the characters. It's like an all around story, and they're all involved together, and I did like that element. And there are decent boss fights in here, like the Jun Jihan one is good. I liked that. But I think the game like gets better just later on, because later on in Yakuza, right, you just think that Kiryu's last outing is in Yakuza 6, right? But you fight him later in the game, and you fight Majima and Saitama, and just the nostalgia waves and all of that. And I feel like if you never played the previous Yakuza games and played Yakuza Like a Dragon first, you wouldn't understand the references and the callbacks, because there is a lot of references and callbacks, stuff like that. And the main character is obsessed with Dragon Quest, but if you never played the other Yakuza games, you wouldn't be able to appreciate just how many differences there was, because like with the Kiryu boss fight, for example, he has the Rush style, he has the Legend style, he has all these styles that are from those games, from Yakuza 0 and Kiwami, and it's just a nostalgia trip. And you know me, a nostalgia bait. I hate nostalgia bait when they bait you in and they don't give you what you want and they subvert your expectations. But here they just make the characters so much stronger than you, and it's just amazing. I think the cutscene after you beat Kiryu is awesome as well. It's like this reference to Dragon Quest, and Kiryu kind of like passes the torch to Ichiban, and the interaction. I just loved that interaction between the two characters, and the Majima Saijima boss fight was awesome. And the guy who you fight at the end of the game, you have the young master and things like that. The guy you fight at the end of the game, he changes his name to Ryo because this politician wants to cover himself up, and there's this whole Bleach Japan's plot line. But we'd be here for way longer if I went into the Bleach Japan stuff. So you have all that stuff, but like he's the final boss, and I'm glad that we didn't actually fight him like the way it ended. Like you had all the party members together and stuff of that nature. You actually got to fight Ichiban as his other name, which is Masato Arakawa, and the Arakawa family is very big in Yakuza 7. So you fought him, you got a quick time event, so a bit of a reminder and a bit of nostalgia for the previous games. And I think the end credit scene was amazing. And so, woo, we actually did this. Is that like coming up for like the longest review out? Okay, this feels like a James Ramblin' Show episode now. But I hope you enjoyed the review. This is the longest review episode we've done. So yeah, I'll see you whenever we're going to do another review episode, right? Don't expect us to be, James, this is quantity over quality. But just understand that there's so many games and so much to talk about. So yeah, see ya for another review episode whenever it'll be. It's kind of rare nowadays that we even do these because there's not been a lot to talk about in January. I never really seen that much movies and shows. I was pretty much just playing the Yakuza games, and we've managed to review it. So yeah, sayonara, gamers.